Joining us now is former prosecutor and attorney Steve Baric on this. Steve, it's good to see you. And I want to ask, Michael Cohen testified that he lied for Trump, quote, out of loyalty and in an effort to protect him. That's what he said. Do you think that he's been credible throughout his testimony so far?
No. I think it's hard to find. I mean, he's been admonished for perjury in the past by other judges. He's been disbarred. I think the prosecution's biggest problem is Michael Cohen is a witness without credibility. You start from that position. And I think from a prosecutor standpoint, it's difficult because usually with a witness like Michael Cohen, you try and bolster him with outside evidence. But in this case, they don't really have a lot of that as it relates directly to Stormy Daniels. So you're just relying on now he's telling a third story. So it's hard, I think, for the prosecution, and they're in a tough spot having to rely on him.
You know, Cohen also testified that he lied about his involvement in the hush money payment, that the legal expenses made were fake. How damning do you think all of this is?
To the prosecution or to the defense?
To the defense.
I mean, again, Natasha, the difficulty is you just never know when this guy's telling the truth. So yes, if you believe what he's saying this time, yeah, it's not good for the defense. Although I will tell you, not to contradict your reporter, it's not just that there were allegedly fraudulent bank statements or reports in a ledger. It has to be, and this is the important part, for the intent to impact voters. And if there's another intent, like Hope Hicks testified to, like protecting his family or embarrassment, that's a real difficulty for the prosecution to get over. So it's very hard, Natasha, to rely on a witness like Michael Cohen because he has such a history of not telling the truth. It's really hard to point out, okay, well, let's really believe him this time. So the prosecution has a tough job on their hands with this witness.
I hear that. I want to ask about his composure, because this is a very different version of Cohen than the last time we saw him as he was sitting on a stand in front of his former boss. Back then, he was quite combative. He raised his voice. He raised his own objections. He's been described as almost serene now, really keeping his composure. Do you think this may change when it comes to what may be the most difficult part coming up? A brutal cross-examination is expected. Do you think that the defense is going to go very hard against him right now?
Yeah, I think they're going to have to try and do that. You bring up a very good point. What I've seen so many times is the witness, and you saw it, by the way, with Stormy Daniels. She was more composed during the direct, and during cross, she started to unravel. I think you see that a lot with witnesses. I think the interesting part here is whether or not the Trump team is going to be able to cross-examine him on these strange TikTok videos that he's been doing throughout the course of the trial, which really kind of show him as unhinged, kind of out there. So it'll be very interesting to see this cross. I think the prosecution had to try and elicit some of the negative stuff in their direct to kind of bolster him heading into the cross. But you hit the nail right on the head. The key with the prosecution's case as it relates to Michael Cohen is, how does he survive cross-examination?
Yeah, and tell me more about that, because you're absolutely right. Just a few days ago, he goes on TikTok and he's wearing a T-shirt that appears to show a Trump-like figure handcuffed behind bars. Do you think that this is going to come up today? Would you put money on that?
Well, look, in my experience, I mean, right, you get a cross-examination, you get to cross-examine witnesses, number one, on issues of bias. So if I were the defense, I'd say, Your Honor, these TikTok videos show a bias. He's actually asked for prizes and gifts on his TikTok videos, I believe, as well. If that's true, then that additionally goes to bias and a reason to lie. And the defense will make a very vigorous argument to allow that in. Now, we'll have to see what the judge does here. I think that it's created a little bit to the carnival atmosphere surrounding this trial. But, if those things, as I mentioned, are all fact-based and these are things he actually talked about and said, then I think that a judge should allow the defense to go into it, but it would be up to them.
Steve Baric, always appreciate the context and time. Thank you.
Thanks, Natasha.
Still to come right now.